Hello there, my name is Payal Narayani and welcome to this video series. यहाँ हम कवर कर रहे हैं पूनम दलाल दहिया की एंशिएंट एंड मेडिवल इंडिया की 3rd एडिशन, जो कि लेटेस्ट एडिशन है. इस किताब को हम ट्रूली रीड करेंगे और जहाँ ज़रूरत पड़ेगी वहाँ हम साथ ही साथ UPSC एंड स्टेट सर्विसेज में आए हुए प्रीवियस ईयर के क्वेश्चंस भी डिस्कस करेंगे. एंड इस सीरीज़ में वीडियोज़ लगभग 30 to 35 मिनट्स के होंगे, बड़े इफेक्टिव होंगे और हम ऑलमोस्ट 40 to 45 लेक्चर्स में ये पूरी किताब कवर करेंगे. और अगर आपने ये सीरीज़ 3 to 4 टाइम्स देख ली तो बिल्कुल ये किताब आपके दिमाग में छप जाएगी एंड ट्रस्ट मी, आपकी एक्यूरेसी भी काफ़ी इंक्रीज़ हो जाएगी. साथ ही साथ आपका रिवीजन भी काफ़ी आसान हो जाएगा. सो अगर आपको रिवीजन के साथ साथ वैल्यू एडिशन भी करना है तो ये सीरीज़ पूरी फॉलो करें. आपको बस आपके पास ये किताब रखकर मुझे सुनना है एंड मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट पॉइंट्स मार्क करने हैं. So without any further delay, let's get started. Hello there, welcome back to the channel Ghatna Sutra. यहाँ हम कवर कर रहे हैं पूनम दलाल दहिया की एंशिएंट एंड मेडिवल इंडिया 3rd एडिशन, जो कि लेटेस्ट एडिशन है. और हम आज शुरू करें विद द टॉपिक ऑफ गुरु गोबिंद सिंह फ्रॉम द चैप्टर भक्ति एंड अदर इम्पॉर्टेंट रिलीजियस मूवमेंट. एंड बिफोर वी मूव अहेड विद दिस टॉपिक, आप इसको प्लीज़ डबल स्टार मार्क कर लीजिए क्योंकि इसके ऊपर उत्तराखंड PCS में 2016 में सवाल पूछा गया था, साथ ही MP PCS में 2014 में इसके ऊपर सवाल पूछा गया था. सो लेट्स गेट स्टार्टेड. गुरु गोबिंद सिंह 1675 to 1708 CE, last Sikh Guru in human form who passed the Guruship of Sikh to the Guru Granth Sahib. He died of complications from the stab wounds inflicted by an Afghan, believed to have been sent by a Mughal governor Wazir Khan. Was born in Patna and organized the Sikh as a community at warriors and called them Khalsa in 1699 CE. To create a sense of unity among the Sikhs, the Guru started some practice which were to be followed by Sikhs. They were initiation through baptism by the double-edged swords, wearing uncut hair, carrying arms and adopting the epithet Singh as a part of their name. He selected 5 persons known as Panch Pyare, the 5 beloved, and requested them to administer the Pahul Amrit Chakha to him. Compiled the supplementary Granth of Deswan Patshaka Granth. Importance of the Bhakti movement. Impact of the Bhakti movement. Bhakti movement could uplift the position of women and members of the lower strata of society. It could also provide them an inclusive path to spiritual salvation, which was otherwise considered attainable only by people of the first 3 orders in the social hierarchy. Since various preachers of Bhakti movement spoke and wrote in the regional languages, it provided an impetus for the development of regional language such as Hindi, Marathi, Bengali, Kannada, etc. The Bhakti movement provided a simple religion to the people, which was without complicated rituals or dogmas. It helped in the development of a new philosophy of life of charity and service of fellow human beings. The synthesis of Bhakti tradition and Sufism also helped in fostering of unity among the 2 communities, Hindu and Muslims. Also, with the mutual influence and interaction of Sufism and Bhakti traditions, even the masses got an opportunity to understand each other's religious tradition and practice, which not only resulted in appreciation for each other's tradition but also developed a feeling of mutual respect among each other. In fact, a best example of this interaction and synthesis was the emergence of Urdu as a new language. Women in Bhakti movement. In Bhakti movement, a significant role was also played by a female poet saints. However, it was pertinent to note that many of these women saints had to struggle for acceptance within the otherwise largely male-dominated movement, and it was only through demonstration of their utter devotion to the divine, their outstanding poetry and stubbornness insistence of their spiritual equality, and with their contemporaries, they were able to garner acceptance and more egalitarian access to the divine. It is also interesting to note that since most of the Bhakti poetry was grounded in everyday familiar language of the ordinary people, the women Bhakts wrote more about the same issues, such as the obstacle faced by them at home, family tension, and the absent husband, meaningless household chores, and restriction of material life, married life, including their status as a married woman. In many cases, the women sent rejected traditional women's role and societal norms and left their husband and homes altogether to become wandering bhakts. While in some other instance, they tried to engage in bhakti without discarding their household rules, interestingly conforming still largely to a patriarchal ideology that upheld the chaste and dutiful wife as ideal. These women transferred the object of their devotion and their duties as the lover or the wives of their divine lover or husband. In fact, from 6th to 13th century, far greater number of women took part in the movement earlier development, while during the later centuries, male bhakts and saints dominated the bhakti scene. Some of the prominent female bhakts are Akma Devi, a 12th century Bhakti saint who belonged to the southern region of Karnataka and earned the honorific title Akka, meaning elder sister, from prominent philosophers of her time Basavana, Chenna Basavana, Prabhudeva and Madhivalya. She was an ardent devotee of Shiva, whom she addressed as China Mallikarjuna. Janabai was born around 13th century in Maharashtra in a low-caste Shudra family. Coincidentally, she worked in the household of one of the most revered bhakti poets, Saint Namdev, and though she never had any formal schooling, she composed over 300 poems focusing on varied aspects pertaining to her life, be it domestic chores or about the restrictions she faced as a low-caste woman. मीराबाई. अब मीराबाई के टॉपिक को आप डबल स्टार मार्क कर लीजिए क्योंकि इनके ऊपर RAS RTS की एग्जामिनेशन में 1992 में सवाल आया था, साथ ही UP PCS में मल्टीपल ईयर्स में आया था एंड साथ ही छत्तीसगढ़ PCS में 2014 में इसके ऊपर सवाल आया था, राइट. सो स्टार मार्क दिस टॉपिक. मीराबाई और मीरा. She is known for her devotional songs pertaining to Lord Krishna, and interestingly, her poetry portrays a unique relationship with Krishna, as she not only being portrayed as a devotee bride of Krishna, but Krishna is also portrayed as in pure pursuit of Meera. Meera belonged to a high-class ruling Rajput family and was married to the son of Rana Sanga of Mewar at an early age, but she was not interested in the household life, and eventually she left her husband and family and went on pilgrimage to various places associated with her divine husband Krishna. Though she was rejected initially being a woman, yet Meerabai's reputation of devotion, pity and intellectual astuteness eventually led her to her inclusion within the community of the saints of Vrindavan. Bahina Bai or Bahina. She was a poet saint from 17th century Maharashtra who wrote different abhangas, women folk songs that portrays the working life of women, especially in the field. So now we are going to start with the 16th and the last chapter, the advent of Europeans. With the discovery of new sea route via Cape of Good Hope by Vasco da Gama in 1498, many trading companies came to India and established their trading centers. At the outset, they entered India as traders, but with the passage of time, in order to safeguard their commercial interests, they tried to dominate the politics of India. Thus, the commercial rivalry among the European power led to political rivalry. And this not only brought them in conflict with each other, but with Indian rulers too. The Portuguese. अब आप पोर्टुगीज़ के टॉपिक को ट्रिपल स्टार मार्क कर लीजिए क्योंकि इनके ऊपर UPSC में 2000 में सवाल पूछा गया था, साथ ही UP PCS में 1992 में, BPSC में 2001 में एंड MP PCS में 1995 में इसके ऊपर सवाल पूछा गया था. ठीक है, सो लेट्स स्टार्ट. The Portuguese. The Portuguese hold distinction of being the first Europeans to reach India and ironically were also the last to leave in 1961. When Indian government took the reins of Goa, Daman and Diu from them. Prince Henry of Portugal encouraged voyages for discovery of a sea route to India. The first Portuguese who succeeded in reaching India, the Cape of Good Hope, was Bartholomew Dias. In 1487, later following his footsteps, Vasco da Gama reached the port of Calicut on 21st May 1498, making it a landmark day in the history of Indian maritime trade. He was warmly received by Zamorin, the Hindu ruler of Calicut, and he returned to Portugal the next year, making huge profits. The Portuguese established their trading stations at Calicut, Canor and Cochin, first Portuguese fort. Highlight this. So first Portuguese port कहाँ पे था? It was in Cochin. With a dream of monopolizing eastern trade and excluding their competitors, especially the Arabs. The first governor of Portuguese in India was Francisco de Almeida, who pursued the famous Blue Water Policy. Blue Water Policy कौन से गवर्नर की थी? Portuguese governor की? It was Francisco de Almeida. Remember this and highlight this. Through which he advocated making Portuguese the master of Indian Ocean by being powerful at sea instead of building fortresses on Indian land. Later, in 1510, the second governor, Alfonso de Albuquerque, the real founder of the Portuguese power, captured Goa from the ruler of Bijapur during the reign of Sikandar Lodi, and thereafter Goa became the capital of the Portuguese settlement in India, and interestingly, also the first territory to be under Europeans since the time of Alexander. Albuquerque not only captured Malacca and Ceylon, but also gained strategic control of the Indian Ocean by establishing Portuguese base overlooking all the entrance of the sea, such as Malabar, Ormuz, East Africa, and the Red Sea. He also encouraged his countrymen to marry Indian women, probably to secure permanent Portuguese population in India. At the time of his death, in 1515, he left the Portuguese as the strongest naval power in India. In 1530, Nino da Chua acquired Diu and Bassein from Bahadur Shah of Gujarat. Later, Portuguese settlements were also established in Daman, Salsette and Bombay on the west coast, and at Saint Thome near Chennai and Hooghly in Bengal on the east coast. However, the Portuguese power declined in India by the end of the 16th century, and they lost all their position in India except Goa, Diu and Daman. The Portuguese act of piracy and persecution of Muslims brought them in conflict with the Mughals. In 1631, the Portuguese lost Hooghly during the reign of Shah Jahan. In 1661, the Portuguese king gave Bombay as a gift to Charles II of England for marrying his sister. In 1663, the Dutch ousted the Portuguese from the Malabar coast. The Marathas captured Salsette and Bassein in 1739, and Portuguese power declined substantially, never coming back to its glory day. Reason for decline of the Portuguese: emergence of most powerful trading competitors such as English and the Dutch. Gradually, other European traders like the Dutch and the English emerged on the scene, and due to precise struggle for control of trade among them, the less resourceful and comparatively weak Portuguese had to give up its territories to its opponents. Also, the emergence of powerful dynasties circumventing the Indian Ocean, like Persia and Egypt, caused a setback to the monopoly of Portuguese over the Indo-European trade. The rise of conflict with strong local powers such as Marathas further endangered their position. Religious intolerance. The religious policies of the Portuguese further weakened their position in the Indian subcontinent. Because of their proselytizing activities and antagonistic attitude towards Muslims, they alienated both Hindus and Muslims. The Jesuit activities gave rise to political fears, and some instance of forceful conversion to Christianity added fuel to the fire. Clandestine practice in trade and piracy. Due to their dishonest trade practices and sea piracy, the Portuguese were resented by all, ranging from the mighty Mughals to the ruler of small states, along with the other European competitors too. The regular naval assault by the Portuguese brought them in conflict with all these powers and thus further weakened Portuguese territorial occupation. Discovery of Brazil. It diverted the focus of Portuguese to the west, as it was easy for them to colonize Brazil. Devoid of the other troubling competitors, Brazil soon emerged as economic centers of the overseas empire of Portugal, gradually superseding Goa. Portuguese gift to India. Cultivation of tobacco and potato. First printing press in India in 1556. Star mark this and make sure that you remember these things, right? कि first printing press India में कौन से यूरोपियन रूलर ने लाया था? It was Portuguese. ठीक है? First scientific work on Indian medicinal plants. Introduced various military innovation techniques like body armor, matchlock men and drilling groups of infantry. The Dutch. अब आप डच के टॉपिक को स्टार मार्क कर लीजिए क्योंकि इनके ऊपर यूपीएससी में 1994 में सवाल पूछा गया था. ठीक है? The first Dutch expedition, which reached the East Indies, was led by Corneille de Houtman in 1596. In March 1602, the Dutch East India Company, amalgamating many other trading companies, was formed. Interestingly, it is often considered to be not only the first multinational corporation in the world, but also the first company to issue stocks. In 1605, the Dutch set up the first factory at Machilipatnam, Andhra Pradesh. So whenever we talk about the European powers, right, आपको ये याद रखना है कि उन्होंने अपनी first factory कहाँ set करी थी, ठीक है? Here we are talking about Dutch. So Dutch ने अपनी first factory कहाँ open करी थी? It was in Machilipatnam. Other Dutch factories were Pulicat, Chinnasore, Kasim Bazar, Patna, Balasore, Surat, Karaikal, Nagapatnam and Cochin. In fact, Pulicat emerged as the headquarters of Dutch operations in India, and from 1617, and the chief of Pulicat also functioned as the Dutch governor in India, and the factory of Pulicat was known as Fort Geldria. However, Pulicat was later replaced by Nagapatnam, which they had captured from the Portuguese. The credit of dislodging the Portuguese from India maritime trade and establishing Indian textile as a premier export of India goes to the Dutch. In 1690, the Dutch company conquered Java and by 1623 effectively controlled the English competition in which Malaya archipelago, though by the infamous massacre of Englishmen at Amboyana. Soon the Dutch monopolized the trade in black pepper and spices, though they also traded in cotton, indigo, rice and opium. The Anglo-Dutch rivalry lasted for about 7 decades, during which period the Dutch lost their settlement to the British one by one, and the final collapse of the Dutch came with their defeat by English in the Battle of Bedera in 1759. The English. अब इस टॉपिक को आप ट्रिपल स्टार मार्क कर लीजिए, क्योंकि इसके ऊपर मल्टीपल स्टेट सर्विसेज में एंड साथ ही यूपीएससी के एग्जामिनेशंस में मल्टीपल ईयर्स में सवाल पूछे गए थे, ठीक है. The English East India Company was established on 31st of December 1600 as the Company of Merchants of London, trading into the East Indies by the Royal Charter issued by Queen Elizabeth I. Initially, the company had right of exclusive trading for 15 years, but in 1609 CE, through a fresh charter, the monopoly of the company was extended indefinitely. In 1609 itself, Captain William Hawkins arrived at the court of the Mughal Emperor Jahangir to seek permission to establish a factory storehouse of goods in Surat, but it was refused by the Mughal Emperor due to Portuguese opposition. The English thus started trading at Machilipatnam, located on the southern east coast, in 1611, which was developed into a factory in 1616. However, in 1612, impressed by the defeat of the Portuguese at the hands of Captain Thomas Best in the Sea of Surat, Jahangir issued a Farman permission letter to the English and they established a trading factory in Surat in 1613. And later in 1615, Sir Thomas Roe came to the Mughal court as the ambassador of James I, the King of England, and obtained permission from Jahangir to establish English trading factory at Agra, अहमदाबाद एंड बरूच. अब आप इस चीज़ के ऊपर ध्यान दीजिएगा कि कहाँ कहाँ इंग्लिश ट्रेडिंग फैक्ट्रीज एस्टेब्लिश करी गई थी एंड यू नीड टू रिमेंबर द लोकेशन ऑफ दोज फैक्ट्रीज, ठीक है. The company's position was further improved in 1632 when they entered the privilege of trading freely in the ports of Golconda through the Golden Farman issued to them by the Sultan of Golconda. The company established its first factory in East India at Balasore, Orissa in 1633. In 1639, Francis Day obtained the site of Madras from the Raja of Chandragiri, which was later renamed as Fort St. George. Madras soon replaced Machilipatnam as the headquarters of English in the Coromandel coast. The English East India Company acquired Bombay from Charles II, the then King of England, on lease at an annual rent of £10 in 1668, and Bombay became the headquarters of the company in the West Coast. In 1690, Job Charnock, an agent of East India Company, purchased 3 villages, namely Sutanuti, Gobindpur and Kalikata, which in course of time grew into the city of Calcutta, Fort Williams, renamed after the English king William III, and which later became the capital of British India. The factories and trading centers that English established all along the sea coast of India were thus grouped under the presidencies, namely Bombay, Madras, Fort St. George, and Calcutta, Fort William. In 1701, Emperor Aurangzeb ordered the general arrest of all the Europeans in India due to their aggressiveness on Mughal ships and territory, but the English could be controlled only for a short time. In 1715, an English surgeon, William Hamilton, cured Mughal Emperor Farrukhsiyar of a disease, and as a result of this, in 1717, the English mission led by the governor of Calcutta, John Surman, secured the three valuable firmans, which were also regarded as Magna Carta of the company, since they provided a large number of trade concessions to company at Bengal, Gujarat, and Hyderabad. Important highlights of 1717 Magna Carta of the company. The company's import and export were exempted from additional custom duties, excepting the earlier settlement annual payment of Rs 3,000. The company was permitted to issue dastaks, passes for the movement of their goods. The company was permitted to rent more lands around Calcutta. The company was permitted to mint its own coins, and it was decreed that the coins minted by the company at Bombay were a legal currency throughout the Mughal Empire. In Hyderabad, the company retained its existing privilege of no duties and had to pay only for the prevailing rent for Madras. In Surat, for annual payment of Rs 10,000, the company could secure exemption from the leave of all duties. Danes from Denmark. आप डेन्स के टॉपिक को सिंगल स्टार मार्क कर लीजिए, क्योंकि इस टॉपिक के ऊपर UPRO/ARO की एग्जामिनेशन में 2016 में सवाल आया था. And it was regarding their establishment कि सबसे पहले where they settled. That was Tranquebar. Danes from Denmark. The Danes formed an East India Company in 1660. They established a settlement at Tranquebar, Tamil Nadu in 1620 and at Srirampur, Bengal in 1667. Srirampur was the headquarters in India. However, they failed to strengthen themselves and were forced to sell all their settlements of the India to the British in 1845. They are known for more their missionary activities than the commerce. French were the last European to arrive in India for sharing the fruit of Indo-European trade. The French East India Company, La Compagnie des Indes Orientales, was formed in 1664 by Colbert, a minister under Louis XIV. In 1668, Francois Caron established the first French factory in India at Surat, and then in 1669, Markara, a Persian who accompanied Caron, succeeded in establishing another factory at Masulipatam. Later, in 1673, Francois Martin founded Pondicherry, Fort Louis, the headquarters of the French possession in India, and became its first governor too. He gradually transformed Pondicherry from a small fishing village to a flourishing and important port town. In 1690, Chandranagore in Bengal was acquired from Shayasta Khan, the Mughal governor. Other French factories in India were Mahe, Balasore, Qasim Bazar, and Karaikal. The French had to face perpetual conflict from both the Dutch and the English. The arrival of Dupleix as the French governor in India in 1742 saw the beginning of Anglo-French conflict that resulted in the famous Carnatic War. Anglo-French rivalry. In the beginning of the 18th century, the English and the French were competing with each other to establish their supremacy in India. The Anglo-French rivalry, taking the form of three Carnatic Wars, were decisive in terms of British conquest in South India. Karnataka was the name given by the Europeans to the Coromandel coast and its hinterland. Karnataka was the name given by the European to the Coromandel coast and its nearby hinterland. A part of the fallout of the event of the Carnatic War was that the weakness of the Indian regional powers, in particular their inability to make naval interventions and the ineffectiveness of their large, unorganized, indisciplined armies against smaller European forces became manifest, and this had grave implications in the political history of the rest of the 18th century. First Carnatic War, 1746 to 1748. English under Commodore Burnet captured French ship. Dupleix, the French governor of Pondicherry, appealed for help to a French governor of Mauritius, La Bourdonnais. Madras was captured by French. Cause of the First Carnatic War. सो आप डबल स्टामा कर लीजिए इस टॉपिक को, क्योंकि इसके ऊपर BPSC में 2000 में सवाल पूछा गया था, साथ ही UPPCS में 2016, 1995 एंड 2020 में इसके ऊपर क्वेश्चन पूछा गया था. ठीक है, सो लेट्स स्टार्ट. Cause of the First Carnatic War. The First Carnatic War was the India's theatre of war for the Austrian succession. In 1742, war broke between the France and Britain in Europe over the Austria's War of Succession. In 1746, the English Navy under Commodore Barnett started the war in India by seizing some French ships. France retaliated by seizing Madras, St. George, with the help of the fleet from Mauritius under French governor Admiral La Bourbonnaise, while English sought help from the Nawab of Carnatic, Anwaruddin. The English under Commodore Barnett captured the French ships. Important battles and treaty pertaining to the First Carnatic War. Battle of Adyar, 1746, also known as Battle of St. Thome, which exposed the indiscipline of Indian army. It was fought between the French and Mehfooz Khan, representative of Nawab Anwaruddin, to capture and restore Madras, in which a small disciplined French army defeated a much larger unorganized Indian army. Later, in 1748, the Austrian War of Succession ended in Europe, so battle also stopped in India, resulting in the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle. Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle, 1748. Madras was restored to English. Louisbourg in North America was given to France. Second Carnatic War. 1749 to 1754. English supported Nasir Jung for Hyderabad and Nawab Anwaruddin of Karnataka. Dupleix supported Muzaffar Jung for Hyderabad and Chand Sahib for Karnataka. Cause of Second Carnatic War. आप इस टॉपिक को सिंगल स्टामा कर लीजिए, क्योंकि इसके ऊपर UPPCS में 2016 में सवाल पूछा गया था. ठीक है. Both the French and the English wanted to increase their political influence in southern India, so they frequently indulged in interfering the local dynastic dispute. When the Nawab of Hyderabad died in 1748, it resulted in the war of succession among different contenders of the throne. Similarly, in the Carnatic, the appointment of Anwaruddin as the Nawab was resented by Chand Sahib. This all culminated in Second Carnatic War, as both the English and the French supported opposite camps. Important battle and treaty pertaining to the Second Carnatic War. Battle of Ambur. आप बैटल ऑफ अंबूर को सिंगल स्टामा कर लीजिए, क्योंकि इसके ऊपर छत्तीसगढ़ PCS में 2023 में सवाल पूछा गया था. ठीक है. बैटल ऑफ अंबर, 1749. The French side defeated the Nawab Anwaruddin at Amber, and his son Muhammad Ali escaped to Trichinopoli for safety and surrendered to the English. Meanwhile, Chand Sahib, the Nawab of Carnatic, rewarded Dupleix by giving Valudanor and Bahur near Pondicherry, and marched towards Trichinopoli to capture Muhammad Ali. Since Nasir Jung, British ally, lost his life in the encounter in 1750, Muzaffar Jung became Nizam, and he rewarded the French. Battle of Arcot, 1751. Robert Clive, an English officer, suggested a plan to attack Arcot, capital of Karnataka, which was approved by the governor Saunders, and he sent a small army with Robert Clive and Major Lawrence. Clive captured Arcot and earned the tag of Hero of Arcot. Meanwhile, French forces and Chand Sahib were defeated at Arni and Kaveri-Pakkam, and Chand Sahib was beheaded in 1752. Since Dupleix failed to capture Trichinopoli, and also due to heavy financial losses, he was recalled to France in 1754. Goodhue succeeded Dupleix as the French governor, and he adopted a policy of negotiation with the English. So that's all for the day. In the next chapter, we'll start with Treaty of Pondicherry. So keep on watching Ghatna Sutra. See you next time.